I guess we get to have a conversation now.
Yes, we get to have a conversation, and I'm so glad because your presentation really provides the backdrop. Because I was going to ask you, we didn't just wake up one morning and post on the restroom door, well, anyone welcome. We had to have, there's a context in which we came to this place in the here and the now. And when you were speaking, I went all the way back to my sophomore year, reading Alexis de Tocqueville. And you quoted him, and there was a statement that he made. He said, "America is great because America is good." He said that America will cease to be great when America ceases to be good. I couldn't help but think of Donald Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." And I'm wondering how that is even possible. How is it even possible for America to be great if it refuses to be good and it's disconnected from what you said, virtue?
Well, I don't believe that America refuses to be good. I believe it is up to us. There's always going to be a remnant. You know what I mean? We can if you really want to complain, like there's a room outside of this one, you can just go and do that. But it's not going to get us anywhere, folks. Everything that is wrong, there are always going to be crazy people. Imagine Jesus said, "The poor we will always have with us." He didn't say, "The heck with the poor." He wasn't saying that. But he was saying, like, look, there will always be problems and brokenness. There will always be people praising immorality and moving away from virtue. There will always be problems. There will always be flawed candidates, whatever. But God says, rejoice in the Lord always. He commands us. He says, you are the answer. If you're just grumbling, you're not listening, you're not reading Scripture, you're not obeying. It is up to the remnant. There's always been a remnant. It's never been like, oh, America was once, everybody was virtuous. How would you like to be a black in Alabama in 1920? Like, let's be honest, okay? There were many pigs, bums, evil human beings in America, and many of them had power, and they used their power against the children of God. That's our history. So let's not pretend like there's some golden past and, oh, now we're here. That is simply not true, okay? There was plenty child rape years ago. There was plenty. Imagine being somebody with same-sex attraction, okay? And instead of having the possibility of going to a church where they would say to you, we can help you. Everybody struggles sexually. The only question is how. And we're broken, we're sinners. Come and join us, and we will love you and we'll welcome you into our fellowship. We want to help you. Your struggle is no different than anybody's struggle. I'm not better than you. Now, imagine hearing that, which you could hear today if you're struggling with same-sex attraction, and imagine if you had same-sex attraction in 1930. There was not a soul you could talk to about it. And by the way, if you found some hidden place where you could hang out with other people who had same-sex attraction, some cops would come in with their billy clubs at some point and, beat up the little fags, the little sissies, beat them up. Was Jesus beating them up? That's the devil, okay? And so if you ever think that everything was once great, there are people who have suffered. And let me tell you, a lot of people have legitimate grievances. And let's not pretend like there was some wonderful time. We had some great stuff, and I would believe that the trajectory was good. In other words, we were moving away from that stuff, and we've moved away from a lot of that stuff. We've gotten better in so many ways, but at the same time, just as you said, Pastor Gino, we have forgotten virtue, but God is looking to us to do something about it. In other words, when I hear Christians just kind of complaining or saying, oh, now we got to go back into the caves and practice our faith secretly, I just think, get thee behind me, Satan, because that is not the voice of God. And we need to fight. I'm happy to die trying and to die fighting. Bonhoeffer didn't win. We celebrate him. He didn't win. He was hanged, but we celebrate him. Why? Because he did the right thing. God is going to judge us on whether we did the right thing, not on whether we won. Bonhoeffer isn't judged by God and say, well, you didn't pull it off, pal, so sorry. It's not about winning, it's about obedience. And if we, I say this not just to Christians, mostly to Christians, but to anybody in America, you have a privilege, and that it's our job to do something about it. So I really have hope, and I really am sure that we can make America great again, because God wants to make America good again.
Yes.
And that's why we're having this conversation right here.
You know, a Reuters poll said that 20% of self-identified evangelical Christians have already made their choice, that they're not even going to vote. You have written about this issue on so many different levels, that people are faced with a choice. They can retreat from the culture, or they can advance and engage the culture. You brought up Bonhoeffer, who in the 30s has to make a very hard choice. You write about it. He has to make a hard choice. Is he going to stay in Union Seminary in America? Is he going to go back to Germany? He's in a crisis. He's asking and answering the question. He knows what's at stake. He knows the difficulties if he goes back, and he makes the decision, I have to go back. And what you pointed out, he's hanged. What do you say to the Christian who is so frustrated at the choices that are available, and they wonder, should I engage? Should I retreat? What should I do?
Well, first of all, I have many very, very dear friends who have said to me point blank, I will never, ever vote for Donald Trump. Now, I don't agree with that, okay? And I'll tell you why. When people say stuff like, well, he can't be trusted, who knows what he's going to do, or whatever, I don't think that's true. I actually think that for all the ills of Trump, and I can list them for you, we don't have time. But the point is that, you know, this is not George Washington. Okay, we understand that. But
he wants George Washington's job, Eric. He wants George Washington's job.
He wants to lead the Continental Army?
Remember, George Washington is the first president. He's the first president of the United States. So when I say he wants George Washington's job, I mean the president of the United States.
Yes, but it was also Grover Cleveland's job and Bill Clinton's job. And I think that we have to have...
Eric, I don't think you should go there.
Oh, I shouldn't have said Bill Clinton.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you imitate Rutherford B. Hayes?
I think I can.
Very few people can do that. I think that, you see, look, in this new book, which I probably haven't mentioned, but it's called If You Can Keep It.
Yes.
And I'd like you to pre-order it if you don't mind. I always want to make sure that I mention that. But in all seriousness, in that book I write about Washington, and I write about the nobility of character of our leaders and how that's important. So if anybody understands that, I promise you, I get that, okay? And in my 7 Men book, I write about George Washington. This is not unimportant, but you have to put things in context. And here's what I mean by that. When people tell me everything that's wrong with Donald Trump and that they're not going to vote for him, I say, I simply think you're exaggerating. In other words, you're saying things that aren't true. As bad as he might be in this and this and this and this, to think like he's some screwball who has the ability to like take over like a tyrant, knowing what I know about the government and the people of America and the good people in government, I don't believe that's going to happen, number one. I just don't think it's possible for somebody to take over like a king. And we talk about him as being, like a tyrant. You can't, Obama has tried and he's done a lot of harm. But you can't really do an infinite amount of harm. You can't like become Hitler or Saddam Hussein. We have structures, okay, that are still here. And I also think that, there's a couple things I want to say. First of all, so I was going to say that for all that's wrong with him, and trust me when I tell you, I can give you chapter on verse on what I think is wrong, I still think the most important issue of our time is the Supreme Court justices that are going to be nominated by the next president. Now, folks, I got to tell you something. 50 years ago, it wasn't important. That we're at the edge of the cliff, okay? Who was elected 50 years ago? It really wouldn't matter. Today, it matters so much that when you talk about losing America, you talk about losing our freedoms, you talk about losing self-government, that is how it will be done. The people of America will vote for someone freely who will nominate judges, who will decide the Constitution says whatever they want. We have the power in the voting booth to stop that. So don't tell me like, oh, we're being ruled from on high. Those people are chosen by the people that we choose. So if you allow Hillary Clinton to be elected, she will not, there's no wild card with Hillary Clinton. There's no like, who knows what she's going to do. You know exactly what she's going to do. She has a view of the Constitution and a view of the judiciary which says the precise opposite of what the founders believe, what conservatives believe. And to my mind, that will be the end of America. Now, if that sounds dramatic, good, because I think people need to get serious and say, if I need to hold my nose and go vote for the other guy, I don't really care who the other guy is. If you don't take this seriously, you will take it seriously in about 5 years. Right now, we're at a crisis point. And so people say, I'm not going to vote for somebody who's not virtuous. I mean, I don't even know what you mean by virtuous. Ronald Reagan had astrologers in the White House. He was divorced. His kid is like a super liberal, super atheist, sneering figure these days. I mean, these are human beings in the Oval Office, okay? So you have to look at them as sinners who have been given a job to do. And so I want somebody to stand up like a Churchill, like a Washington. That's what I want. But if I can't get that, doesn't mean, well, I'm going to sit home and I'm not going to vote. God forbid, folks, that's what gave us a second term of this president. And it just rips my heart out. Because, there's always an instinct, particularly among Christians. There's a certain kind of Christian that they get very theologically fussy. And they think that that's purity. That's not purity, folks. Sometimes, Bonhoeffer is the classic example. Bonhoeffer said, I don't want to get involved in a plot to kill Adolf Hitler. Do you know what the Christians were saying to him? Are you crazy? You're going to get in a plot to do that? You should go and pray. Preach the gospel. And he said, what gospel? Like, what gospel are we going to have if this man is not stopped? Now, I'm not happy with what I have to do. He was not happy. He didn't say everybody should go and try to kill Hitler. He was not happy. We don't need to be happy. We simply need to do what we have to do and pray that the Lord would work it out. Pray that God would forgive us for voting for somebody who's not perfect the way we are. But I don't, and I'm not saying this, you got to understand, I'm not saying this as somebody who doesn't understand the other side of this conversation. I have really dear friends who will violently disagree with me, like some of my best friends don't agree with me on this, and I'm going to still try to convince them why. Not because they're wrong in the basics, but I think at the end of the day, this is serious. And America is going to be ruined forever. If we have another few justices that are like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Breyer and whatever, folks, that's it. That's it for the next 30, 40, 50 years. That is way more important than who's sitting in the Oval Office for 4 or 8 years. Trust me. That is way more important, and we're right there now. And God bless the leadership in the Republican Party for saying we will not allow Obama to elect somebody. I mean, that's incredible leadership right there. Pray that they would stand firm. They better stand firm. But there's one thing I wanted to say. I was on the radio today with my friend John Zmirak. John Zmirak was one of the people, the most anti-Trump of my friends. And on the radio, we'd have fun conversations. I always have fun with him on the radio because he's funny and he's brilliant. It's just great to talk to him. But today, I said to him, okay, John, now you said to me many times in the past that Donald Trump can't be trusted to who he's going to elect to the Supreme Court, so I can't even believe that you would vote for him because who knows what he's going to do. He's going to nominate his sister, And I said, I really don't think that's true. I simply don't think that is true. Well,
he came out with a list today.
He came out with a list.
His sister wasn't on the list.
And he said, but here's what happened. John Zmirak, this is really what I want to come to. John Zmirak said that he and a few others said we need to tell all the pro-life groups in America not to endorse Trump until he promises publicly to appoint conservative pro-life justices to the Supreme Court.
And the pro-life community, Eric, would say Bush appointed so-called pro-life justices. Conservative Republicans have made conservative Republican choices. 1973 has come and gone. Guess what? Children continue to die. The pro-life movement continues to say child killing is wrong. What difference will it make if now obviously there's lots of differences.
These are two different things. First of all, just to finish this point, so he said that he and his friend basically they came out and spoke to all the pro-life organizations and said do not endorse Trump unless in other words, we've got to work with him and we've got to force him to do the right thing. Paul Ryan did the same thing. Paul Ryan said, I'm not ready yet. Let's have a conversation. Yeah. That is wisdom. That is wisdom. You don't just say, I'm in or out. You say, I'm thinking. Let's have a conversation. And let me tell you what I will do for you if you do this and this and this and this. That's called politics. That's good. My friend convinced these pro-life organizations to say, we're not going to endorse Trump unless he does this. And guess what? As you said, he just came out yesterday with a list of 11 or 15 justices approved by the Heritage Foundation. Now, if he sticks to that, I mean, not only did he say that, but the point is he clearly gets it that he can't win unless the people for whom this is serious, you know, he said, I'm going to pay. But what I'm saying is, like, that's a huge sign of hope that we can hold his feet to the fire. Now, if we just go home and say, whatever, we don't care, more babies will be killed. What do we think is going to happen? More babies will be killed. We've got to hold his feet to the fire. And I really think that, you know, the more people, whether it's Chris Christie or Ben Carson or whoever gets around him, that I think, first of all, this is going to be the first time in his life that he's going to be really humbled. That, you know, we know people who've never been humbled, and that's not good. But I think this job is going to humble him the way it humbled Lincoln and whoever has it. And I really think that he's going to understand I need counselors, and so that's why I'm hopeful. And when it comes to the life issue, I still think that just because the president is pro-life, you're right, it's up to us. If we have a fair playing field, okay? In other words, if Hillary's not president and you don't have like a police state trying to enforce this kind of stuff and giving more money to Planned Parenthood and so on and so forth, if we just have a fair playing field, I believe truth is on our side. I've spoken about this. The medical truth, with the Littleton videos that came out, people on the fence, don't ever forget there are people on the fence that they don't think like you and they don't think like me, but they're open-minded. They're not pro-abortion ideologues. They're the people in America who don't know what they think. And when you start giving them facts in a winsome, kind way, don't argue with them. Just say, did you know this? Did you know this? Did you know? The facts get out. These people are quietly making up their minds. When you hear about baby parts being sold, and you read about this stuff, and this stuff has been getting out, thank God for Carly Fiorina talking about it in the big debate with 20+ million people watching. Thank God for her. Because of that, lots of Americans, you'll never meet them, they heard that, and they watched those videos. I really believe that the truth is on our side, science is on our side, and it's exactly like with Wilberforce. He said, I've got to educate the English people about what is going on. If I keep doing this, they will eventually say, we didn't know. Now we know, and now we're with you on this issue. I believe that.
You know, there might be a person who says, look, I'm willing to be open-minded about Trump, but I'm not willing to be empty-minded about Trump.
Well, that's good. Who should be empty-minded about Trump? I mean, the people that are his, like, crazy base, you know, like, there are people that just, like, I don't care about anything, I don't care. That's a vote, okay. Now, if that prevents Hillary from getting in the White House, that's good. But it doesn't mean that I want to be one of those people. I mean, I'm on radio every day for 2 hours, and so people contact me by Twitter and whatever, and the most nasty garbage, you know, and those people are voting for Trump. Well, you know what? God bless America. I don't have to check my brain at the door. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying, is like, if the good people don't get involved, then those people are gonna, you know, be the base.
I asked a constitutional attorney, why isn't the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment, where it guarantees religious freedom, why isn't that a sufficient guarantee of religious freedom? And by the way, which candidate do you think is going to support and strengthen religious freedom, and which candidate do you think might be the most corrosive?
Well, I'm no constitutional scholar, but I play one on TV. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I really think that there is no question that, and this is sad, but the Democratic Party, which used to be, you know, moderate, when you think of Harry Truman, and you think of, you know, people that were not socially liberal ideologues. It is very sad that the party has moved to a place where they are now in bed with, you know, like the gay activist community. I'm not talking about gay people. I'm talking about the activists that are demanding that every American say that what they believe is beautiful, you know? You cannot have religious freedom and those people in the same room. They don't want religious freedom. They want to win. They want to say to you, you know what? Shut up. That's what they want from you and from me and from a lot of people. And that's not the American way. But unless you have leadership that understands that, Hillary Clinton has sold her soul to work with those people. She has praised Cecile Richards. She's gotten awards from Planned Parenthood. Those people are I think of them as the sexual left. In other words, it's basically about that issue. And they really don't, it's not about fairness. And it's not about, I respect your ideas. They don't respect your ideas. They don't even respect democracy. They just want to win. And they have forgotten, and again, it's what I keep talking about, they have forgotten how this is supposed to work. They just think that I want my ideas to win, and I'll do whatever I need to do for them to win. And I'm sorry to say that the Democratic Party has, in the last few years, really gone into that camp, and that you cannot have a conversation, and that's heartbreaking. That's bad.
Your friend John Stonestreet said that this culture has already made up its mind, that they've already had to choose between religious freedom and sexual freedom, and they've already chosen sexual freedom.
Right.
Do you see that being reversed, or do you see, again, that we can hold out hope that Christians, people of faith, can once again make a case for a biblical worldview of why the position that we hold and embrace is the one that's going to provide strength to the very fabric of our culture and society?
Well, first of all, I mean, my friends like John Stonestreet, I mean, I get what they're saying, but at some level, I think it can be defeatist to speak too much that way and to say, like, America's chosen, whatever. I mean, that is really like saying, it's over, good night. I don't believe that. I don't believe God is giving me permission to say that. And I don't believe he's giving you permission to say that. It's over, we lost. Are you kidding me? Like, really, imagine in a war, that you're in a war and you're here now, and things are looking bad. And you go, things are looking bad, I'm gonna go home. Do you respect that person? I mean, haven't you watched movies? Haven't you seen stories of like the people when the chips are down, they rise up and somehow things change. Folks, that to me is God's message. And I don't really understand how we get out of it. And so when people talk about we've lost the culture war and sexual freedom is one, yeah, for now it is one, but do we not believe that, I mean, it's like what I said earlier about my friend Larry Taunton's book and what, it is tough to get this message out. I don't have a TV show. I have a very limited radio show. You know, my book is let's see what happens with my book. This is why I'm being so shameless about saying to pre-order it, because, you know, if it's out there at Barnes & Noble, people will pick it up and they'll say, well, this looks interesting, and they'll maybe get these ideas. But if we don't try hard to get these ideas out, then it is over. But right now, we still have a chance. And I think of Bonhoeffer, okay? He was saying to the German people, if you wake up now, if the church in Germany will wake up now, we could win. And the church said, no. If you've read the Bonhoeffer book, you know the story. The church said, no. The church said, that's not our job. Our job is to be pious, to pray. Bonhoeffer said, no. Your job is to stand up and be the church. Your job is to stand up and be the people of God and to march against evil at the risk of your own life. And by the way, if you believe all that stuff you claim to believe, you're not afraid of losing your life. Or are you a hypocrite? Well, we know that most people in the church are, at the end of the day, hypocrites. I hope I see them in heaven, but they're not going to lay down their lives. That's scary. Folks, we've got to have the faith that we know we can't lose our lives. Jesus defeated death on the cross. Now, if you believe that, you're a Christian. If you believe that, you're not really afraid of death. I'm not saying that naturally there's not some fear, but we've got to talk ourselves out of it and say, what do we really believe? We've got to live out our faith. We have pastors afraid to talk about this stuff. Oh, I don't want to lose my 501c3 status. You know, the devil can really work with pastors like that. He can do a lot with that kind of a pastor, and we've got a lot of pastors like that around the country. They're afraid of losing their jobs. Folks, are you kidding? There are people around the world losing their lives, losing their families for their faith. Do you really believe it or not so much? That's where, to me, that's where we are. We're at a place where American Christians have to decide what the German church had to decide. The German church said, oh, we're not ready for that. We don't want to stand against the government. We want to be pious. I don't want to tell a lie. If the Gestapo comes to my door and says, are you hiding a German? I don't want to lie. I could go to hell. Well, if you really read the Bible, it doesn't work that way. There are people in the Bible who lie for God's purposes, okay? So this whole idea that you're going to be this pious Pharisee and you're going to be like, hoarding your gold, hoping that, you can go to heaven with all your gold, that's not living for Jesus. And I have to say that if we don't use the freedom we have right now, Bonhoeffer was saying to the church, you've got to stand up now as one. Catholic, Protestant, Lutheran, Baptist, we've got to stand against this evil. If we stand against this, we will win. And they basically said, no, thank you. And when they finally said yes, it was too late. And that is why I really believe God allowed me to write the Bonhoeffer story, because it's this story of like the window is closing. If you don't act now, it's over. It's over. God gives us an opportunity, but to be defeatist. So when my friends like John or whatever say that, like I get it, but honestly, I really think we have a lot more power and freedom that we act like we don't have it. We have tremendous freedom. And when people are told, for example, you better bake this cake or you're going to get fined. I mean, do you know what the founders would have said? You could bake the cake yourself, punk. Like, I'm not baking any cake. Well, what are you going to do? Fine me? Ooh, yeah. Well, I can get pro bono lawyers. I can fight this. This is not right. You're not treating me correctly. What you're doing is wrong. Now, will the church back that person up, or the church say, oh, I'm glad it's not me. I'm glad I'm not a baker. Folks, if we do not stand up in the spirit of 76, okay, it's over. And the people who founded this country and who fought for this country all these years, they weren't, chickens the way a lot of people are today. It's like, oh, I just want to have my little thing. I want to have my little picket fence reality and stuff. And it's like, that's not what God created us for. He created us to live out our faith. And I really believe that if we will do that, the results are in God's hands, but to act like it's over, I've got a number of friends who say that. I frankly just disagree with them. Mm-hmm. I just don't agree with them. And it doesn't mean I'm looking to take us back to Eisenhower, but the point is that it doesn't sound to me like the voice of God.
Well, let's get into the weeds just for a moment, because you've been a keen observer of the current political cycle. You've seen the Democrats not becoming more liberal, but actually lurching into socialism. You see the Republicans not becoming even more liberal or even more conservative, but now going into a whole different place, a populist place. What's going on?
Well, it's as I've been saying tonight, we have forgotten the basics. If you forget the basics, you're going to be all over the place. The basics are the basics. They've not changed. Now, first of all, think about this. If Tocqueville and the founders all understood that the source of our freedom is our goodness, our virtue, okay? What do you say when a Bernie Sanders is shaking his finger at the banks and he's right? Now, when I say he's right, I don't mean generally like I'm against the free market but the point is he does have his finger on something. And I've talked to some people who understand that. Imagine if all bankers were virtuous and people in finance were virtuous, the way God wants us to be virtuous and to care about the little guy. You would not say, you know what? Screw them, I can make money on this deal. And they say, yeah, do you understand what you're doing in this deal? Like you're harming all kinds. I'm making money on it. It's legal. If that's your attitude, you are wicked. And there are people in finance, the corporate culture and the financial culture and the banking culture is not a godly culture. Now, I'm Mr. Free Market. I believe in all this stuff. But the point is that we've got to own up to why is Bernie Sanders popular and why are young people thoughtlessly going for socialism? Because first of all, they don't understand what socialism is, and they don't understand that it's going to ruin us. But the point is that the ideas behind it, the populist ideas, are correct, and that we have to have a culture of virtue. Conservatives and evangelicals should be preaching at bankers and financial people, whatever, and saying, you need to do the right thing. And if you don't do the right thing, God's going to judge you, because you are going to harm a lot of people, and he loves those people.
Are you a little bit surprised that in the popular culture, they're not using this as a teaching moment to say, hey, wait a minute, Bernie Sanders is a socialist. He's a socialist. Do you understand what that means?
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about what that means.
Right.
What is it about this particular moment that they go, hey, you know what? We don't care that this is a teaching moment, and we don't want to use it as a teaching
I'll tell you,
moment.
it's very simple, and we all know the answer, and you know the answer. It's because it's fun to watch Hillary get in trouble. Right? In other words, it's kind of like poetic justice, where you say, like, let's not talk about socialism just yet. Let's see what happens at the convention. I mean, that's actually true, right? Now, and I also think that there are a lot of people say, like, I would love it if Bernie won, because I don't believe America could vote for a socialist. In other words, at that point, we would have people talking about what is socialism, but they're not talking about it now. But I think that that's the point, is that that now's not the time to talk about it. But you're right. You would think that people would be unpacking this on the news and be discussing it, and they're not talking about it. And I think that they themselves are somewhat socialist.
Did you have Dr. Ben Carson on your radio program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
You had him on my program?
I had him on my program.
Oh, in your program?
Yeah, I also have a program.
Okay. I know you do.
But I had him on my program, and what was really interesting, when Dr. Ben Carson walks into a room, he really is the smartest guy in the room. And one of the things that I found a little bit hopeful is this strange relationship that he has with Donald Trump, that for whatever reason, Donald Trump looks at Dr. Ben Carson and says, he's a virtuous man. He's a man who's a principled man. He's a smart man, a virtuous man, and a principled man. And he goes, I don't know why, but I want to hear what he has to say. Do you find hope in that?
Oh my gosh, of course I do. And that's one of the things that makes Carson a virtuous man, is that early on, he was willing to take the slings and arrows and stand up for Trump when nobody else. I thought, what happened to him? Is he crazy? And he said, you know what? I'm going to do what I think is right. I believe this is right. I know people won't understand me. But I think that he's doing what I was saying just a few minutes ago, is that good people like Ben Carson need to get around Donald Trump and force him to see certain things. And I really think that Carson is a virtuous, godly, sincere, brilliant man, and that if you have any brains, you're going to see that. And I really do believe that Trump sees that, and that Carson will have a role in the administration or something like that. So there is no question that right there, just what you said, absolutely gives me hope, thrills me.
Now, everything about this election cycle has been a surprise. I know you're not a prophet or the son of a prophet, but if you were to speculate some surprises in the next few weeks, what do you see? What do you anticipate?
In the next few weeks?
Maybe
I have
even
to think,
months.
What is the month here?
I mean, what are the chances of the FBI actually indicting Hillary Clinton?
You know what? That's my question. I don't have a clue. I don't know how these things work. All I know, I mean, listen, folks, let's not forget, we need to pray and trust God with the results. And we shouldn't get upset or wring our hands or stomp our feet. We need to pray and be God's people and just trust that however this works out. I mean, I really believe that God is deeply longing for a faithful people who will trust him. Because if we really trust him, he can do amazing things. But he really needs us to trust him. What I mean by that is that he has given us a role. Our role is faith. We don't have to believe. We don't have to say, Lord, I love you. May you be glorified. What are you going to do, Lord? We need to have a hopeful, faithful attitude. And then God can say, well, now I can show you some things. Now, but he's not going to show us things that we say like, it's game over and whatever. Okay. Then I think we're in trouble. So the short answer is that what is going to happen, I do think you are right. There are going to be surprises. We can only speculate.
Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen, but then this is probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you tonight. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. One of them will win. One of them will lose. If Hillary Clinton wins, what does trusting and believing and being the people of God look like for the people who are here?
We go back to the caves.
Okay.
Just kidding. Just kidding. We never go back to the caves. We basically, I really do. I have actually said this, that if it on some level it doesn't matter. I mean, just think about this.
Obviously it does matter.
Well, it does matter. In the natural, it matters. But my larger point is, We have to have the kind of faith that says we have no idea what God is going to do. In other words, imagine if you really had the faith that God can do anything, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to believe, and I'm going to live in that. God can do anything. You could have revival in Cuba. You could have revival. We don't know how God is going to do what he's going to do. All we can know is what we're going to do. We have a choice. David Wilkerson, pastor of Times Square Church, where I met my wife and where I sometimes still go, he once preached a sermon called Right Song, Wrong Side. And he talks about the people of Israel, that they're being pressed against the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army is coming down, and they're freaking out, and then finally, God parts the Red Sea. They cross the other side, and then they sing this happy song on the other side. Oh, God is great, God is great. And you think, wouldn't it be nice if they knew that God was great before he did that? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what faith is? To know that God is God no matter what. And God is to be praised no matter what. Now, if we really believe that, then we know God can raise the dead. God can do anything. All he's looking for is a faithful people. And so no matter what happens, I mean, look, folks, if we were thrown into Stalin's Russia right now, what does God say? Game over, man. Hang it up. God says, rejoice in me. Pray for your enemies. Bless those who harm you. Some of you know the story of Richard Wormbrand. He was imprisoned by the communists, tortured. Folks, we don't know what we're going to go through, but we know what God requires of us, and we know that God will be with us. And so if, God forbid, we get that kind of a presidency, I would say we still have to have hope. We have no idea what God is going to do. We do not know. I mean, I actually thought of this. It's like, when the dog catches the car, they don't know what to do with it. I kind of feel like it's a little bit like that with Hillary Clinton and the presidency. That if she were to be president of the United States, I really think suddenly you would say, okay, I got it now. Now can I go home? Because that's not a fun job. And God forbid we have some horrific terrorist attack. We have had nothing in this country. 9/11 was nothing compared to what could happen, and you know that. It was nothing compared to what could happen. God forbid something really horrible happens. We have no, let's be honest, we have no idea what the future holds, folks. We have God. We have no idea what the future holds, and it's our job to be faithful no matter what.
Anne Graham Lotz made that really great statement. She said, right when I think that the world is falling apart, I have this sense from the Lord that it's falling into place. And we're going to conclude here in just a few minutes. I know that you want to sign some more books, and I'm sure that people have questions and they want to talk with you and meet with you. But I think, again, when we talk about the crisis of faith and politics, that in the end, there's three things that I'd like to encourage you to do. The first is to remember what the psalmist said. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. Because that word magnify means to make him big, to make God big. And when you start to make God big in your life, in all the ways that the Bible describes, the candidates become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And the second thing that I would encourage you to do, it's an old-fashioned word that Wilberforce would have been very familiar with. Mortify the flesh. Mortify means just put to death your members. In other words, it's to begin to desire what God desires. It's to begin to realign our thinking and say, what if I took time and began to care about the things that God cares about, the things that Jesus reveals? In other words, you put to death those things that distract you. The third thing that I would ask you to do, simplify your life. And by simplify your life, I'm not just talking about you have 3 boats and now you have 2. I'm talking about that singular simplicity that comes with understanding that the economic circumstances aren't going to determine your commitment, your integrity, the centrality of who you really are. It's really that simple. Magnify the Lord, mortify the flesh, simplify your life. And again, I really do guarantee you this. in direct proportion to your willingness to make God big, the candidates will be small.
That is exactly correct. And that's the whole thing, is that God calls us to himself no matter what. And that's the priority. It's not that this other stuff isn't important, but we really, really have to understand that that is what he calls us to do. And if we do that, he can do anything. And we need to have faith that he will do anything. He will do all kinds of, we cannot imagine what lies ahead.
You know, and different people, they say, well, my conscience doesn't allow me to vote for this person or for that person. Let me just be clear. Your conscience is a moral organ. In other words, your conscience doesn't tell you what to do. It motivates you to do what's right. It's like your stomach. It doesn't know what to eat. It will try to digest whatever you throw down there. Your conscience basically begs you, do what's right. Do the right thing. Do what's right. But your conscience has to be informed. And it will be informed from someone or something. And so I want to encourage you to consider the sources. Read those people who are going to give you great information and help you think things through. And then in the end, make a choice. And then when you do, make sure that you can wake up the next morning and look in the mirror, because you're going to have to live with the choice that you make, and so is the rest of the country. And you know, I thought about that in this second term, Eric. 50.1% of the United States of America voted for Barack Obama. I wasn't necessarily upset that he had actually won. I was upset that 50.1% thought his views are my views, his goals are my goals. But I think that we can turn this around, can't we? There could be a different choice that's made.
I honestly, I know that. And I want to communicate that. That to me is God's heart, is a heart of joy and hope. And this is not Pollyanna hope. I mean, this is real, okay? This is a battle. But God calls us to the battle. We are born for the battle. We're not born just to have a nice life. We're born to the battle, to glorify God. You all know, those of you with gray hair know this. Life is short. We get a short time to serve God, and then it's over. This is it. This is it. We get to serve God. So it's not about doing something great and heroic. It's simply about being faithful to what he has given you. Whatever he has given you, be faithful with that. Ask him what he wants you to do with it, and do it and rejoice. That is why you are on the planet, folks. And God wants to have that wonderful relationship with you, where he rejoices with you in the midst of whatever you're going through. I really believe that, we need to have that kind of faith. It's not about thinking the right thoughts. It's about that relationship with the God who loves you and who has called you into a relationship with himself and has called you to a meaningful life, whatever that means. Taking care of a loved one, or running for president of a country. It doesn't matter in God's economy. He simply calls you to do what he calls you to do, and he will judge you on whether you did it his way or some other way. And what a tragedy if we miss God. So that's the simplest thing I can say. Do not miss God. He's given us a glorious opportunity, an opportunity to live in a country with these freedoms. Use those freedoms, see those freedoms, celebrate those freedoms, help others get those freedoms. He's given you the privilege of being a free Christian in America, where you can exercise your faith. Let's get exercising.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Eric Metaxas a hand for coming and spending some time with us.
Thank you, Gino Geraci.